This video is sponsored by B&H. What's good, everybody? For those of you guys who are new to my channel, my name is Sidney Baker Green. I'm an international photographer, a cinematographer, and colorist, and back in the first week of August, I was selected as the B&H Creator of the Week. The creators team and I came up with this really cool idea to compare the Zcam E2 F6 to the Canon EOS R, but with a twist. From a color grading perspective, which is what I predominantly do here on YouTube. However, I think it's really interesting that that is not what this video turned into. I did a little bit of a social experiment, and while I still have my data, I feel like I've picked up an even bigger point from this entire review than just the actual comparison on which camera performs better. So without further ado, stick through this video, and I can't wait for you guys to see everything I uncovered during my testing and my little social experiments. So I think it's no secret that the Canon EOS R and the Zcam E2 F6 are two completely different cameras for two completely different crowds. The Zcam F6 is a cinema camera, and the Canon EOS R is a photography camera that can also be used as a hybrid camera. But because the EOS R and the Canon EOS R family are really popular cameras within the camera community, I thought it would be really cool to do a comparison. But I wanted to push these cameras to their max, so I chose an HDR situation to really push the sensors and see not only how they handle highlights, but also how they handle shadows. My favorite HDR situation to shoot in is of course a beautiful sunset, but we all know how hard it can be to expose for that sky properly and also get really nice skin tones without sacrificing integrity in one or the other. So my main goal was to give the Canon EOS R a leg up, and the only way to do that is to use its 4K 10-bit recording mode that can be used over HDMI. So I paired that with the Atmos Ninja Flame, which is something we can all do, and I still found this to be a really good comparison because you could buy the R, a lens adapter assuming you have some Canon glass, and a monitor that can record over HDMI, and you will still save some money compared to buying the Zcam F6. So I wanted to give it its best leg up, and not to mention we're also using a stronger codec on the Canon EOS R using ProRes 422 HQ instead of the ProRes 422 on the Zcam. With the Zcam, we are just going to be shooting in 6K at ProRes 422, not ProRes 422 LT or HQ, just regular ProRes 422. A noteworthy mention will be the drawback that you get when you use the 4K 10-bit external recording mode in C-Log on the EOS R, and that is going to be the 1.7 crop factor that you get. I was not able to use any of my standard primes. I had to use my 16 to 35, and I stayed around that 16 to 20 mark. So just keep that in mind for the review purposes. But without further ado, let's show the footage, and then I want you to guess which one was shot on which camera. So what do you guys think? Camera A or camera B? Leave a comment down below on which camera you initially thought was which, but I'm gonna give you guys a few more seconds. Pause the video if you need to. All right, so the interesting thing is that these cameras actually look really similar. There's some technical things that I'm going to show you from, again, a colorist perspective and a technical filmmaking perspective as well that really shows the differences. But camera B is the Zcam E2 F6 and camera A is the Canon EOS R. As I went through and edited the footage and got the EOS R footage to look good with just my color grading techniques, I'm like, this might be dangerous to post out here because I don't want you guys to get the wrong impression. It took a lot of work to pull the detail out of the Canon EOS R, and we had quite a few hiccups and drawbacks along the way of shooting with this camera in such an HDR situation. Now, if you have a program or a noise reduction software, then you are going to be better off than if you didn't. However, we all know the drawbacks that come with using noise reduction, and that is going to be that loss of detail. One of the really distinct features about the EOS R2 is that the noise noise signature is very digitally. It's not filmic, it has that digital look. So this image really starts to look clinical with that classic Canon look, which isn't bad. Some people like it, some people don't, but it was very noticeable in this HDR situation. I've noticed the same thing with the C200 as well. The noise performance in the shadows is not the best. This leads me to say that in a low light situation or an interior night situation, you're not gonna be that well off using the EOS R. So this heavy noise problem is coupled with another problem that is presented on the Canon EOS R compared to the Zcam, and that is going to be a lack of dynamic range. Now, my thoughts on the EOS R having C-Log is actually quite simple. I don't believe that this sensor has enough dynamic range to really bring this profile to light. I know that it does appear to the eye that the EOS R is keeping up with the Zcam F6. However, there is a distinct clipping in the highlights that a lot of people didn't notice, and a distinct clipping in the shadows, which gives it that, you know, pure white and pure black look that is really common here on YouTube. That just so happens to work out in this camera's favor, but I also felt like I was losing shadow information because of that lack of dynamic range. When I was grading the Zcam footage, I really didn't have a problem, but I feel like if I was trying to push a color perhaps into my skin tones, especially with them being black, I wouldn't have been able to do that as effectively on the EOS R, and they would have gotten muddied up. So that being said, low light is gonna be a really hard pass on this camera if you want that quality image, unless you're willing to sacrifice, of course, shadows or highlights, or you're willing to embrace that silhouette look. That's probably going to be your best bet in these HDR situations. With the Zcam F6, I actually had very few complaints. This camera not only handled the highlights well, but it handled the shadows well. And what I mean by when I was talking about the EOS R not having the dynamic range, this is how highlights should be handled. You see in this clip here that I'm not only able to capture my skin tone information, the shadows in the trees, but also the orb of the sun. Very few cameras that I know of are actually able to do that. I know the original Ursa Mini Pro, while using Cinema D and G, was one of them, but that list is very, very small on cameras that have enough dynamic range to do that. Not to mention that the grain on the Zcam F6 also feels a little bit more filmic. It's smaller grain, it feels like film grain. So when I do have grain in my image or noise in my image, it's not really unpleasing. I did apply just a little bit of noise reduction on the Zcam F6 just to clean it up a bit, but it wasn't really necessary, and I could have left it there for all intents and purposes. And just another noteworthy point, I feel like I had a lot more information to play around with and work with the Zcam F6. Even if I wanted to take the footage and completely relight it to a different look, I would have been able to do that with this footage, which is something I can't say is true for the Canon EOS R. I really needed to stay with that darker look for sure. Otherwise, I was definitely gonna lose integrity in my skin tones. The shadows wouldn't have looked right, the noise would have been horrible. So flexibility is another thing that you're going to get with the Zcam F6, even if the EOS R has a better codec. So I think it's very clear based off the way I've talked in this video that I believe the winner in this case is going to be the Zcam F6, as it should be. This is a cinema camera, it's not a hybrid camera. I think it's really cool to see how well the EOS R can hold up, but again, there were those big technical misses, especially in dynamic range, losing information in the sky on the EOS R, and actually losing information on the shadow side on the EOS R as well, compared to just the amount of flexibility that I have with the Zcam F6 in the professional situations that I feel like I shoot in, and a lot of you guys want to shoot in too. You're gonna be better off with this camera for a little bit extra money. However, that doesn't mean that the EOS R is a bad option, and this brings me to the social experiment, because boy, oh boy, did I not expect this. This is my favorite part, what I was waiting for in the video. So I had a little bit of a social experiment where I took two screen grabs, one from the EOS R and one from the Zcam F6. I posted them on my YouTube channel, and I posted them on the Zcam user group, and I said, hey, which image do you prefer based off of dynamic range, tone, etc. And I prefaced these results with the fact that my framing was a little bit off because of that crop, and there was a lens flare which I thought actually kind of gave it away because of the cinematic qualities of which image was actually better, but everyone chose the Canon EOS R. I have heard from some people in the group that the framing was a big thing for them, even though I told them to ignore it. However, for me personally, I don't necessarily believe that the framing being so different and there being a lens flare on my face is a good enough reason to ignore the big loss of information in your highlights and the loss of information that we had going on in the shadows with the EOS R. So I thought it was very, very interesting that people, even those who were using the camera, preferred the EOS R look over the Zcam F6, but one of my friends in the Zcam user group did a little bit of an explanation, and I want to read you the comments on, first of all, why he liked the image, and then after he read the comments, why he thinks people preferred the EOS R unknowingly at the time. So Camera Mackie, his link is in the description down below. You can check out his work. His Instagram is there too. He does awesome film work, but he said he preferred the top shot because it looks more filmic, partially because of that slight flare softening the frame, but also the image looks more full, like there's a depth to it, from the colors to the dynamic range. The bottom shot looks more like the colors are a little bit more dual, contrast, more digital, or what I would call clinical, right? But then he went down and saw how many people liked the EOS R image over the Zcam F6 image. And he said this, and I think this really speaks volumes. Just ran through the comments, LOL. I feel this is a bit of a gamble because it seems like a lot of video peeps' eyes are tuned via YouTube rather than actual filmmaking. It's kind of two different crowds, though some would confuse the two. When watching films, they are graded very crunchy. There's still a lot of depth to the tonality and to the contrast, like a thickness. When typical YouTube stuff is graded, it's crunchy in this flat, sterile way, with perfect blacks and whites and grays with the saturated ambient tones. So it would be interesting in seeing what the average person prefers. I already have my assumptions. This is a comment that I really wanted to bring out in this video for a big reason. We talk a lot about cameras on this platform. Here on YouTube, we have people who love Canon, people who live by Sony, people who live by Blackmagic, right? And it can get heated sometimes when people start talking about cameras. There are some diehard fanboys out there who will come to cut you up if you disagree with their brand. But I think it's important to remember this. A lot of people's eyes, and a lot of your eyes, and sometimes even my eyes, are being tuned by the creators that we watch instead of actual filmmaking principles. There is no denying that the Zcam F6 image is technically more correct. It's more cinematic, it's more filmic, and it has all of those characteristics. But people, even those who use the camera, were like, man, I like this look, which even shows that it's influencing their grading, and they may not even be using the camera to its fullest potential. That's no shade to them. They actually all grade really beautifully, and I've never seen them grade to the EOS R type look, that clinical look. But I still think there's something to be said about the fact that a lot of people were able to ignore those technical errors on the EOS R side by losing that highlight information and that shadow information, all because of a lens flare and perhaps a little bit of framing. I did end up redoing the test because there were some people in the user group who were like, well, the framing was off, so it really isn't a good control, and that's what people were doing, was gravitating more towards framing. Even though in the question I did specifically say, ignoring framing and posing, and only looking at these color characteristics, which one do you like more? So I redid it, but I still found that 3 out of the 4 people that answered did like, to some extent, the EOS R image a little bit better, until I told them and they're like, okay, now I see it, I like the Zcam image better. So it's just an interesting situation. More people did like the Zcam image, but it's very interesting, and so that's why I wanted to bring out the fact that, you know, sometimes we do need to either unlearn certain habits or just realize how we're being molded and affected here on this world of free education. There's nothing wrong with that YouTube creator style look with the whites, blacks, and, you know, that clinical look. But if you're going for a filmic look, if you're going for that cinematic look, then we should start holding that cinematic look to its faithfulness. So that is it for today, guys. I hope you guys liked this video. Originally, I was supposed to do it kind of vlog style, and that just did not end up working out. I had some technical difficulties along the way both times when filming. I was gonna take you guys out on set, so I hope you guys enjoyed this little talking head video. If you did, be sure to give me a big thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and turn on those post notifications if you have not. And also, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. Do you guys prefer that EOS R look, or were you gravitating towards the Zcam? Be sure to follow me on my social media. The links are in the description down below, as well as the YouTube fam. Their links are also in the description down below. If you guys are ever feeling uninspired, uncreative, or just want to give up on life, remember, every day airplanes take off against the wind. Keep climbing, stay inspired, guys. And as always, stay fabulous. My name is Sidney, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.